Hey, how's it going? So I want to do a video on this project that I've been working on called Lumina. It's actually a modification to this program. So what I want to do here is explain what the project is and what modifications I did and why I did them, and kind of show you a brief rundown of what this does. So Lumina, it's a GitHub repository developed by some cool guy. I found it maybe a year ago, and it's a Python program that runs on a Raspberry Pi, and you need another additional hardware device that you need to buy for the Raspberry Pi, which is just a small USB microphone, because in order to interact with the Raspberry Pi and the program, it uses voice commands. And what these voice commands do are you say the name of the program, which is the trigger word, Lumina, and then you send it a category or some description, which then does an API call to OpenAI in order to generate an image. So I got that working. I don't think it says it in the documentation, but in order to do the API calls to OpenAI, you have to have money in your account. So you can't just willy-nilly just submit an API call to OpenAI and get images back. And at 1080p, I think the images were coming out to about 15 to 20, 25 cents each API call to get an image. And what I wanted to do with this project in my Raspberry Pi was having a old TV of mine, an old small, like 27-inch thing that I got while I was in Korea, and kind of cannibalize it, put it in a picture frame, hook up a Raspberry Pi with its microphone and this program, and have this dynamic picture frame on my wall that I can change just by telling it what I want to have on my wall. I thought that was pretty cool. So I built it out, I got it working, threw a little bit of money at that OpenAI to do those API calls, but once I did the calculations and figured out how much it was costing, I don't have that type of money to be throwing at images to have on my wall. And I was like, okay, how do I fix this? So the other day I had been working on something called Invoke AI, which is a locally hosted AI program that lets you do it's kind of like Photoshop for AI, where you can paint and put some text and image to image manipulation to create some really cool stuff. Built a Docker container doing that, and then did some other things, learned about this thing called Llama, which is like a large language model, which I'll explain how I integrated that into this. And then something called Stable Diffusion, which is, I think, the kind of mainstream open source term. I don't know too much about it, other than that's like the go-to for doing text to image and any type of image or other. There's kind of a suite of tools that the container I stood up had in it, and I'll show it to you in a second. So what I do want to do is first orientate you to the screen. Over here is a desktop icon I built to just launch Lumina through the terminal, so we don't have to go in and type Lumina or Python 3 Lumina.py. So this is a VNC to the Raspberry Pi, so I can actually record this video. So this is like remote desktop to the Raspberry Pi. Over here on the right hand side, on the top part, this is my server that has a video card in it to do the processing of the images for the AI. This hosts all the Docker containers with the different large language models and text to image processing on it. So up here, these are your cores, and when I send a command to one of the AI things, you'll see the cores start processing. You'll see this blip up Here, not so much, but this is your memory, this is your disks, this is your network usage. And down here, this is looking at the video cards. The main one that I have that's doing the processing is the GeForce 1080. It's an old card. Still got some kick to it. And over here is like the utilization. So when it's generated an image, how much of it is being processed by the video card. Some other things is like the memory that's being used, the wattage. But those are the two, or the one key thing to really look at when I start setting commands to the Lumina program is the utilization over here. But first what I want to do is I'm going to bring over this, because this is the normal way to access these Docker containers that I installed on the Linux server, and it's the text to image, and then these are some of the other things that they have in Stable Diffusion, so you can do some pretty cool AI stuff. So that's the text prompt that I give it, and I hit generate, and then it's going to generate this 512 by 512 image using this sampling method. Sampling methods are like trained data sets, or diffusers, I think they call them, that generate images. So some are faster than others, some are better at pictures but slower. But this is the one that I'm using right now, and I have it on a random seed, meaning it's going to give me a random picture almost every time based off of that prompt. So I'll just show you what it looks like as it generates this picture and how it does that, how it goes through these different steps. Steps up here are like how much it refines itself. So the more steps you give it, the more refining the sampler does in order to generate these images. However, more samples means more compute power and also more time to generate that image. So as I bumped it up from 20 steps to 85, you can see it's taking longer, but it should be generating a more defined image at this point. That's kind of what I've learned over the past few days. So it'll just finish here in a second, and you'll see a higher fidelity image of the prompt that we gave it. So a little bit more detailed and in depth. It's pretty cool, right? So this Open Web UI, this is like your Chat GPT. It's a large language model. It's got a back end. The front end is called Open Web UI. These are the different type of models that you can have. They do different things, have different capabilities, different trained data sets to create these different models. But I'll come back to that one in a second. So I'll show you how Lumina works, how it's supposed to work. It may take me 1 or 2 tries to activate Lumina because it's voice to text. It kind of waits for silence, and then it'll pick up when you say the activation word Lumina. That's one of the keywords. So it's gonna boot up. This is just the background. I changed the default background to this AI image that I had generated. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say the activation word, and then I'm going to give it the prompt cyberspace or cyberpunk city space. And we'll see what it generates. Lumina, cyberpunk city space. Guess I should have said cityscape, but up here you can see the one CPU went up. It's not multi-threaded. You can see this running at 100%, and it generated that. I can send it another just random one like Lumina, a bag of apples. So it should kick up on the CPU a little bit, you'll see the one video card that's doing the processing and generate some apples. Not really a bag of apples, but that's some apples. So that was pretty cool, and that was kind of the basis of what I did, what I first modified to get it to make API calls to my locally hosted Stable Diffusion to generate images for Lumina on, let's see, it picked it, it picked up Lumina when I said it, Lumina on my TV. So I was like, that's pretty cool, but I don't always want to be able to think of what prompt to give it. So I was like, well, let's use AI to do that. So with this large language model, I figured if I can send an API call to this on the same server, then I can generate descriptive prompts for AI. So I want to give it a 250 character description of a cyberpunk cityscape, not city space, for a text to AI image. So you can see it's doing its thing in the background and generating some prompts, but I'll send that. Oh, that was quick. Sometimes it hangs as it's trying to think, but I think it's warmed up. So if I were to say all of that, I would be kind of exhausted afterwards. So I'll just try a little bit. Lumina. Neon-drenched skyscrapers pierce the smog-choked sky. Okay, picked it up. It's pretty cool that the voice to text is being done by the program. Pretty cool. Well, I guess that's what we get. So what I wanted to do using that AI is then use it as an API call. So I developed my own keyword in Lumina called random. So I'm going to activate it by saying the first keyword, and then when I give the description, I'm going to give random and then a subject for it to create an AI description. So first one I'll do is cyberpunk cityscape. So here we go. Lumina, random cyberpunk cityscape. Picked it as random, sent it to AI. AI kicked off real quick, developed this prompt, and now it's generating an image. And pretty good. Show you again, Lumina. Lumina, random fantasy dragon. I don't think it does dragons too well, or at least not with the settings that I have, but it surprised me a few times. Next time we'll just try fantasy. Not too bad. Lumina, random fantasy. It gives a pretty good description with that API call to that large language model, to the Stable Diffusion. So now I don't really have to think. I just have to think of a subject and give it like Lumina, random mountainous adventure. So at this point, I just kind of want to wrap this up, that this Lumina project, if you're into Raspberry Pis, I think the Lumina project and the developer that did it is on point with the thing that he had. However, if you modify or want to run your own because you don't have that OpenAI image money just lying around and you want to host your own, I just kind of did this as a proof of concept, and I plan on trying to develop it a little bit more. So like if I give it a prompt, if I give it a random prompt, that's kind of my indication that I don't know what I want to see or have displayed. So constantly generate things on a 30-minute refresh rate. So every 30 minutes it'll generate a new random prompt of that subject in order to have new images. If you're just hanging out or want to see some stuff or be surprised at what your AI is hallucinating on in the background, I figured this would be a good thing to have a look into that type of world. So if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. Appreciate you taking the time and listen to me ramble on about this project called Lumina with the background of Stable Diffusion and Llama, Open Web UI. I think I'll try to put that all in the description, and I'll leave you with this last AI generated image. Thanks, Obama.